At the chemical and physical level, the universe operates with mathematical precision. When a snowflake crystallizes, we see a system of consistent, unbroken rules. The ecosystems that surround us operate on a similarly strict economy. In the natural world, absolutely no energy or resource is wasted. Every drop of water and every thermodynamic transfer serves a precise, balanced function. Yet the moment we introduce human society into this framework, a math fails. We observe a reality where ruthless individuals regularly extract immense power, while highly ethical people endure a lifetime of systemic suffering. This creates a structural paradox. If human consciousness terminates at the moment of physical death, then the universe contains a glaring contradiction. It is ordered at the elemental level, but chaotic at the level of human experience. We can visualize this using a ledger of existence. Inputs of natural resources flow flawlessly into society. But outputs show massive, unresolved moral inequalities. If the timeline ends at death, the ledger cannot balance. The deficit remains open. A system designed with microscopic perfection that generates unchecked chaos at its highest level of consciousness is a mathematical absurdity. In the 11th century, the Persian Ismaili philosopher Nasser Khusraw set out to solve this exact cosmic paradox. In his philosophical text, the Al-Akhwan, or the Feast of the Brethren, Khusraw approaches cosmic justice as a series of rigorous deductive proofs rather than religious doctrine. His core thesis states that without a final physical and spiritual resurrection, known as Ma'ad, the creation of the universe is a meaningless game. Khusraw builds this proof upon three logical pillars. The first is the cosmic economy, a framework detailing the flow of utility throughout the natural world. The second pillar is the moral asymmetry, which addresses the extreme disparity between human actions and earthly consequences. The final pillar is the teleology of the rational soul, examining the specific, measurable functions of human intellect. By tracking Khusraw's logic alongside parallels in Western and Eastern philosophy, we can see why the nature of human intellect requires a state beyond physical death. Khusraw's first pillar relies on the principle that nothing in creation is void of purpose. This layered pyramid illustrates the hierarchy, starting with a base of unmeltable and meltable minerals. These minerals break down to provide vital nutrients to sustain the plant layer, which then sustains animal life. This interdependent chain generates utilities like silk, wool, and musk, funneling them directly to humanity at the peak. Khusraw identifies a specific inconsistency here. If this massive natural machine exists to sustain humans, only for those humans to vanish forever, the system generates a catastrophic amount of cosmic waste. Terminating humanity at the point of physical death means the universe has spent eons generating an infinite buildup of resources for a non-existent result. 2 centuries later, the poet Jalal al-Din Rumi captured the mechanics of this natural hierarchy. His verse observes, "I died as a mineral and became a plant. I died as plant and rose to animal. I died as animal and I was man." Rumi maps existence as a continuous, upward evolutionary trajectory. Each stage of matter exhausts its utility and transitions into a more complex state. Just as a mineral dissolves to fuel the growth of a plant, physical human death is a necessary graduation into the next operational form. The vast expenditure of nature's resources is only justified if humanity transitions into a higher, eternal state, where that utility is finally realized. This leads to Khusraw's second pillar, the moral asymmetry of human existence. History shows that perpetrators of systemic exploitation frequently live in luxury, while the righteous routinely endure sorrow and violent ends. If the universe operates on elemental justice, but allows the tyrant and the victim to share the same fate of returning to dust, the balance of reality is broken. 700 years after Khusraw, the German philosopher Immanuel Kant arrived at the same deduction in his Critique of Practical Reason. A side-by-side comparison shows the overlap. Kant defined the highest good as the required alignment of virtue with happiness. Kant observed that within a mortal timeline, virtue and happiness rarely intersect. Ethical actions often lead to personal loss, while unethical actions yield material rewards. Because the highest good is impossible to achieve in a single mortal life, Kant concluded that rational beings must postulate an immortal soul to balance the scales. If you're finding this breakdown of philosophical frameworks useful, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to continue this research. Medieval Persian theology and Western Enlightenment philosophy arrive at the same conclusion. An afterlife is the structural necessity that prevents systemic moral failure. This demand for cosmic equity is also present in East Asian philosophical traditions, specifically within classical Buddhism and Hinduism. These frameworks reject permanent moral asymmetry, requiring a mechanism to ensure that every action eventually yields an appropriate reaction. These two distinct paths illustrate the different solutions. Eastern traditions utilize samsara, the cycle of rebirth, driven by the mechanism of karma. Karma operates as an absolute accounting system. A tyrant's current prosperity is tied to an accumulation of debts and credits from previous cycles. While both paradigms demand balance, they diverge in their ultimate mathematical goals. The Buddhist framework leads to nirvana, the extinguishing of the individual ego to escape the cycle. Khusraw's model instead drives towards the permanent preservation of the individual soul. Khusraw's framework requires the preservation of individual identity. The person who made the earthly choices must remain intact to experience the reality of those choices. Khusraw's third and final pillar explains why that identity is permanent: the teleology of the rational soul. He defines human consciousness as the nafs-e-natika. This entity learns and teaches, generates complex theories, and seeks out universal truths. In nature, no fundamental drive exists in a creature without an external resource to satisfy it, like the existence of water to satisfy thirst. Applying this to the intellect, a perfectly wise creator would not instill an inherent desire for eternal truth if a state of eternity did not exist to fulfill it. This logic echoes the arguments found in Plato's dialogue, the Phaedo. Plato argues that an intellect capable of grasping eternal concepts, like pure mathematics, must itself be housed in an eternal vessel. The conceptual ledger of existence shows the result of these combined proofs. Inserting the variable of mod, or resurrection, into the output side resolves the inequalities of the mortal realm. The ledger finalizes the totals, and the system aligns into a mathematically sound equation. In Khusraw's framework, the afterlife functions as a required mathematical proof. It reveals the universe as a rational, profoundly just, and coherent design.